One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Did you get wet?
Yes.
Did you stay up there through the whole trip?
Basically the whole trip. We came back when my dad caught the sharks.
Why'd you go back when your dad caught the sharks?
He told us to come back, and I couldn't refuse. They had caught a shark, so it seemed like legitimate. So we went back, and there was a little shark, and so we did whatever we did with that with Dad and the captain, and I think that's pretty much the only time we went back. My brother might have gone back for something else, maybe to use the restroom or something, but I don't remember.
When you went back when your dad caught the shark, was the boat captain there?
Yes.
Was your mom there?
Yes.
Were you afraid when you went back?
I was afraid the whole trip, but I wasn't particularly afraid about it's. You know, we had caught a shark, and so I wasn't necessarily thinking that there was something going on. But we definitely didn't want to go back, but there was just nothing we could do. My dad said, you know, come on, boys, help with the shark. We were going to have to come.
What time did you get back from the fishing trip?
We all got back around, somewhere around midnight.
And what did you do then?
And my brother and my dad, I think, they went in the house upstairs somewhere, and my brother and I managed to leave in his car and go over to UCLA.
And what did you go over to UCLA for?
We just wanted to talk, and we had not had a chance to talk really privately except on the boat, and we had no idea what was going to happen on the boat, so we just kind of really hadn't had a chance to talk at all, and mostly wanted to talk about the fact that nothing happened on the boat. And
did you think that meant maybe nothing was going to happen?
Yes, I was relieved that nothing happened on the boat. I felt less sure that they were going to do something. And although the whole thing was very strange. And so we went to UCLA in the stadium field, and we hung out there and talked. We had a pretty long discussion.
And did both of you, when you were talking, did both of you seem to have the same feeling that maybe things were going to be okay, or were you still concerned?
Erik was still, I don't think my brother was feeling better about the fishing trip too much. You know, I mean, it was obvious that nothing had happened on the fishing trip, but he didn't take that to mean anything. Maybe they had just felt we were too much in the front of the boat or something. You know, he wasn't sure. And so we had a conversation about staying apart the next day and just sort of going one day at a time, and that I would stay home, and maybe they would have a conversation with me or something, or initiate something, and I would allow that opportunity and just hang out at home. And he wanted to be out of the house, he would be out, and then he would check in occasionally. And we talked about some other things also.
When you returned home, did you see either of your parents?
Yes.
Who did you see?
Well, we came home and the door was locked, and I tried to, I checked all the other doors, and they were all locked. So I figured, they had been locked on purpose, and we should ring the doorbell rather than just go over to my guest house and sleep there.
What do you mean you thought they'd been locked on purpose?
Well, the door had not been locked up to that point. So they had been locked, and So I figured they were locked on purpose.
So what time was this about? Do you know?
It was very late. I don't remember exactly what time.
Did you wear a watch at that time?
No.
So you rang the doorbell,
Yes.
and what happened?
Nothing happened actually for quite a while, and then eventually my mother came down, and she came storming down and opened the door and immediately started yelling.
What was she yelling about?
The fact that it was late and we were ringing the doorbell and waking her up, and just stuff like that, that we just, you know, I made a comment that if, you know, she would give us a key instead of, you know, we would be able to get in the house. And she kept the keys. She liked all the keys and copies of the keys kept in this little drawer in the foyer. And, you know, you could take a key and you could return it, but you couldn't just have your own key. And so I always was forgetting. And so whenever she did lock the door, since they were usually not locked, I was usually locked out. So I said that to her, and she just was furious, and she said a lot of the things that she usually does when she's furious.
What things did she say?
Did she say? That she hated us, that, you know, we're nothing but a problem in her life, and also that she wished that I was never born. And that's when my brother said something in my defense, and she turned on him. And that's when she made the statement that if he had kept his mouth shut, things might have worked out in this family. And she said it very, you know, in a fury. And as soon as she said that, she said some more stuff afterwards, and I told her, okay, Mom, sorry, and just basically let her win the argument and just, you know, burn out. And she ran upstairs, and my brother and I stepped outside and had a talk by the cars about this statement.
About which statement?
The one my mom had made. As soon as she made it, my brother and I both felt that she had basically given away what they were doing.
Which statement in particular are you referring to?
The fact that if he had kept his mouth, she was referring to what he had told me, and that things would have worked out in the family.
And did you two talk
Similar
about?
to what she said Thursday, but it was kind of different.
Did you two talk about what that meant?
Yes.
And what was that conversation between the two of you?
Basically, just that she had given away, you know, something was going to happen, something was planned, and, you know, she hadn't given away how or when, but that they had made the decision. We felt that they had made it, and
Yes.
that my mother, and I figured my mother, if someone was going to give it away, it was going to be my mother, and we felt that she had.
So the statement was to Erik, if you had kept your mouth shut, this family would have worked out? Is that the
If you had
statement?
kept your mouth shut, things would have worked out in this family.
Did you, after that conversation with your brother, did you go back and sleep in the guest house that night?
Yes.
And where did your brother sleep?
He slept in his room.
And did anything else happen that night?
No.
Next morning, did you see your brother when you got up?
I don't think so. I don't remember.
What did you do all day Sunday?
Well, I hadn't done anything. You know, I had stayed up late again, and I did go to sleep, and I woke up some point in the morning. And I kind of just woke up and went outside to sort of see what was going on. And then I decided not to go into the main house. I stayed in my house. And at some point, I my brother showed up mid-afternoon, I believe.
Did you,
In the mid-afternoon, around then.
did you make a call to Perry Berman at some point that day?
Yeah, I had called him before my brother had arrived, to see if he could go out that night, because that was part of my discussions with my brother, which was that we would try to have as many plans in the evening, especially with other people, as possible, because it was just safer. And then during the days, try to be apart or not there. And so, yeah, I called Perry. And,
Did you get to talk to him, or?
No. I left a message.
And during the rest of the, you said your brother checked back in with you at one point during the day?
Yes, around the middle of the day.
What was the purpose of that, of having him check
Well,
back?
we had arranged for him to check in, so I knew he would be at some point. And he didn't want to call in case Mom answered the phone at that point. So he just arrived, and I don't remember exactly, but he might have come into my guest house. But we had a conversation at that point about what had happened to him the night before.
And what had happened to him the night before?
He had had a confrontation with my dad.
Had you heard it the night before, or was this the first you heard?
This is the first I had heard of it. No, that's not the first I've heard of it. I'm confused. He told me in the morning, before he left, we had this conversation. And then he came back in the midday to check on me again. That's the way it happened. Because my dad had tried to get into his room the night before, he said, and had been pounding.
This time there would be,
This-
motion to strike his hearsay.
State of mind again, Your Honor.
Right, this is not,
Okay. So Eric told you that
He
your
told me
dad
that-
had tried to get into his room.
Right, and he had the door locked, and he told me the whole thing where he was sitting on the bed and he had the gun there, and my dad was pounding on the door and demanding that he open it, and he wasn't going to open it. And you know, he was trembling, and he wasn't sure if he was going to shoot Dad through the door or what was going to happen, and that they basically almost had this whole thing happen without me even knowing. And he thought Dad was going to burst in, and he didn't, and he was pretty, you know, really worked up telling me this whole thing that had happened, and I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I believed it, but I just was, like, just amazed. And
How did it make you feel when you heard about this?
I couldn't really have been more nervous than I was already after what my mother had said. It was just added to it, just the feeling that obviously that night was going to be a problem, since I'm sure my dad was going to come back, and that my brother should stay away from the house.
Did you go into the house at all on Sunday?
Yes,
And did you see your parents at all on Sunday
yes.
during the day?
They were watching tennis.
And did you have any conversations with them?
Just briefly. I went in and I said, I decided that I would go in and try to just sort of say hello and just see what the atmosphere was like. And I went in and I said hello, and they didn't answer me. And I just kind of stood there, and they were watching TV. And then I went into the kitchen and was kind of shooken up by that.
Was that unusual for you to speak to them and them to not answer?
Not for my mom, but for my dad, it would be unusual. And so I went back in again to try and get a conversation of just small talk going, just say hello or whatever. And I sat down to watch TV also in
Well,
the
wait.
other chair.
What were they watching on TV?
U.S. Open. or not the U.S. Open, the warm-up for the U.S. Open, whatever. They were watching the top pro tennis tour. I believe it was the tournament before.
They were watching tennis?
Yes.
Okay. So you said you walked back in and sat down?
I walked in and I sat down on the little, like at the love seat thing, the other couch. And at some point, I tried to talk to my dad again and asked him about if he had the number to that unarmed arbitrage camp in Marina Del Rey.
Why did you ask him about that?
Just to get a response. It was making me, it was just sort of unbearable not to have them say anything at all, and I was feeling like a ghost, like we were already dead. And so I just wanted to talk. And so he had, in the past, been kind of bugging me to try that camp, and I had not gone to that camp. And so I asked for the number this time, and he said, "What does it matter anymore?" And when he said that, and I just felt there was a problem.
Why, when he said, what did you say, why it doesn't matter anymore? Is that what he said?
No, he said, "What does it matter anymore?"
What does it matter anymore? Why did that have any meaning to you?
Yes, I felt that, well, I could have a lot of meanings, but it just clearly had something to do with the crisis and the Thursday conversation and what had been happening in the house.
What did it mean to you? How did you take that?
I took it to be just my dad's sarcastic way of saying, "You're dead. You're not going to be around to be going to unarmed arbitrage camps." And that's the way I took it.
Did you stay there after that comment?
No, I left. I stayed around for a short period of time, and then eventually just left and went back to, actually sat in the patio furniture area.
Did you have a phone conversation with Perry Berman after that?
Yes.
About when was that?
Sometime in the late afternoon.
You said your brother had checked in at one point in time
Right.
during the day, is that correct?
Right.
Was that before or after the conversations you've just told us about with your
Before.
parents? When you talked to Mr. Berman, did you call him or did he call you?
He called me, and I don't know. I don't know if he called me, actually. I might have called him.
All right. So you had a phone conversation with him.
Right.
And was there anything unusual about that conversation?
No, except that, yeah, there was something unusual, which was that my dad had lied. He had called at some point after I had left a message.
Who had called?
Perry had called, returning my message, and my dad had lied and said that I was out and that I couldn't do anything that night. Perry had been returning my message about doing something that night. And
your dad had told him that you were out?
Right.
Were you home all day?
Yes.
So did the fact that your dad had told him that you were out when you were home have any meaning for you?
Oh, yes, it had a great meaning.
What did it mean to you?
I felt that something was going to happen that night, and he wanted me home.
So when you talked to Perry, did you make any plans with him?
Yes. I planned to, he wanted to go, he was going out to dinner with a friend of his, and then he was going over to something called the Taste of LA. And then he wanted me to come with him. I wasn't going to leave without my brother. And I basically told him my brother wasn't home and I was waiting for Erik, and I would meet him at the Taste of LA at least after dinner.
And did you and your brother have plans for that evening? Had you talked about what you were going to do that evening?
Yes. Well, we were going to go to the movies.
So did you wait for your brother to arrive?
Yes.
And when did he get back? If you know. Do you know what time it was?
It was late.
And when Erik came back, did you talk to him about what had happened that day?
Yes. We had a real quick conversation.
What'd you tell him?
I told him what had happened earlier in the day with my dad and mom not talking to me, and what Dad had said about the tennis camp. And I told him about Dad lying about me being home to Perry, and that we had to get out of the house.
How were you feeling at that time?
I was, the fear was growing, and it just sort of was getting out of control for me, and I was feeling very, like, crumbling. And the night before, after my mom had said that, I felt like things were sort of, I was not in control. I was sort of slipping away, and I was trying to be, I was trying to help my brother by being not as hysterical as he was, and trying to say that things were going to be all right, and I was losing that. And especially since my dad lied about me being home, I felt that something was going to happen Sunday, and I was scared. I wanted to get out of the house.
So did you tell your parents you were going to leave?
Yes.
Where was this, that this conversation took place?
I went in the house and wanted to tell my mom that we were leaving. And she told me that we couldn't go, and to stay there in the house and not go out. And I told her why, and I was supposed to meet someone at the movies, and that I was late, and that we had to leave, and she just had no answer. She was just sort of confused, and I don't think she had expected that I was going out.
Was it unusual that your parents would tell you you couldn't go out on a Sunday evening like that?
Yes, it would be unusual.
Was your brother there when you were having this conversation with your mother?
My brother was there at some point.
Where was this conversation?
In the foyer, kind of in between the den and the foyer.
Was your dad there?
No, but my dad came in as soon as he heard the argument, and he came in and sort of pushed my mom aside a little. And
What was your mom acting like at this point in time? Was this her usual rage, or was she calm, or?
No, my mom was very sort of real balled up and tense the whole weekend, and I really only had those two conversations with her, but very cold, seemed to be also really similar to the way I was, tense, and I think anticipating. That's the way I read her.
Okay, so she tells you you can't go to the movies. Is that correct?
Right.
And what do you say to her?
Well, I said to her that we had plans. I was supposed to meet a friend, and we were late, and that thing, and she had no answer for that and was sort of stammering, and that's when my dad came in and sort of pushed her aside. And that's when I noticed that my brother was next to me or behind me, because he didn't talk to me. He spoke to my brother and told him to go upstairs to his room and wait for him while he finished his movie. And then my brother didn't move, didn't know what to do, and I said, no, you're not going to touch my brother. And we had a big argument. It was just a couple of sentences. And
What were those sentences? What was he saying?
I don't really remember the sentences, but I was saying that he wasn't going to touch Erik, and he was just ignoring me and telling my brother to his face to get upstairs and wait for him. And my brother left and went upstairs.
And what happened?
My mother came, my dad left, went in the den, and my mother was sort of still standing there and said something to me about that I had ruined the family, and I was just not saying anything, and then my dad came out and took her by the arm and said, "Come on, Kitty," and they walked into the den, and then my dad closed the doors. And,
What did you think was happening?
I was sure that that was it. They were in the den, and my dad had closed the doors, and I didn't believe that Dad was going to finish any movie or talk to Erik. I thought he was just buying time, and I realized that they had been waiting for Erik to get home, like I had been, and I just freaked out.
What did you think they were doing in the den? What did you think was going to happen?
I thought they were going ahead with their plan to kill us.
Then?
Yes.
So what did you do?
I ran upstairs to tell my brother that it was happening now, and that they were gonna, this was it, and they were gonna kill us. And I met him at the top of the stairs. He hadn't gone in his room, and I remember sort of being surprised by the fact that he was at the top of the stairs. And I said something to him along those lines, that it's happening and they're going to kill us. And he said something about that he wasn't going to wait for Dad in his room, and that we had to do something. I don't remember exactly who said what, but at some point I said, "I'm going to get my gun," and he said he would get his gun. And
How did you feel then?
just, it's hard to describe how I felt, but I had to run as fast as I could, and that my life was sort of slipping away, and that we were going to die.
Did you go get your gun?
I did.
And was it in the guest house? The gun?
It was in my guest house, and I ran. I got it. And
Where
I
did
ran.
you go?
Huh?
Where did you go?
I ran to where we had the ammunition
Which was where?
in my brother's car in the front.
Did you see your brother there?
Yes,
Did you load your gun?
we did.
Did he load his? Or did you see?
I just grabbed a bunch of ammunition out of the box, and I was giving him ammunition, and we were just loading as fast as possible. And
Do you remember how many shells you loaded? Do you know?
I don't remember. I remember pulling out all kinds of shells and just loading my gun and having shells on me.
What did you do then?
We ran. My brother had, I guess, got outside through the study doors, because he ran toward the study window door. And you had to kind of go over this. I think we went over the little concrete thing. It was over to the side of the door on the left. And we went through that door, and we just sprinted to the room, hoping to get there when they were not expecting us.
And what did you do?
My brother got there first, and we just burst through the doors, and I started firing.
Was the room lit?
No?
Could you see?
No, it
there
was
any
dark.
light?
The lights were out, and I remember seeing, I don't remember too well, but I remember seeing shadow right off to the right, and my brother over to the left. He ran off into that direction, and I started firing immediately in the direction of whoever was standing right there.
Was the TV on? Do you remember? Was there any light in the room?
The TV, I remember, I found out later that the TV was on. I don't actually remember the TV being on, but there was probably light in the room from the TV.
When you started firing, do you remember if your parents were standing or seated, or do you have a clear memory of that?
I remember who I realized was my dad at some point, sort of coming forward in my direction. So he was standing, and I remember firing directly at him. I believe he fell back.
Was there a lot of firing going on?
Yeah, my brother was, I guess, firing, and there was things shattering, and the noise was phenomenal, and we fired lots of, many times, and there were just glass, and you could hear things breaking, and you could hear the ringing noises from the booms, and there was the smoke from the guns, and it was basically just chaos, and I really didn't know who was firing at who and what was going on. I just was doing what, firing my gun, and that's what I just was trying to think about, that and not freezing.
Do you remember firing a very close shot at your father?
I believe so.
At what part of his body?
From the side, behind, kind of. I ended up there. I don't remember the shot, really, but I remember the picture.
The picture you saw here? Are you talking about your dad's head wound?
Yes.
And do you think you did that?
Yes.
At some point, was your gun empty?
Yes.
And was there something about your mother that you learned then, either through Erik, or you saw something or heard something?
Could see sort of behind my dad, really barely, but could see somebody moving, seemed like moving in the direction of where my brother should be. And so I reloaded.
You reloaded? Is that yes?
Yes.
And what did you do after you reloaded?
I ran around and shot my mom.
Where did you shoot her?
I just reached over and I shot her close.
Was that the last shot that was fired? Is that yes?
Yes. Yes.
What did you do after that?
I dropped my gun and I went into the foyer and I sat against the wall.
Where was your brother?
I don't really remember. I remember seeing him later against the other wall.
In the foyer?
Yes.